Right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to those attending, and also to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. Details of the business to be considered today is shown on the agenda, copies of which are available in the room, and it's also accessible online under the live broadcast. Fire alarm, we're not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm does go off, please follow officers to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting points, which for us is the main forecourt out the front. Mobile and tablet devices, for those in the room, please switch off any mobile device before the meeting starts, please, or put them on silent. Please note the councillors on the committee may use their laptops or tablets during the meeting to view the agenda paperwork. For declarations of interest, please ensure you identify which item you have an interest in, state whether your interest is pecuniary or non-pecuniary, and give the reason that you have an interest. Members need not declare an interest in any item on the agenda where they've already listed this interest on the register of interests. Furthermore, you do not need to declare an interest just because you are, for example, a ward councillor. Thank you for those attending and watching online. We move on to agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence and any substitutions.
So we've received apologies for absence from Councillor Lackmana with Councillor Mathers substituting.
Thank you and welcome, Councillor Mathers. Declarations of interest before this meeting. Does anybody have any declarations? No? None recorded. Okay, agenda item 3, to receive the minutes of the meeting 28th of July 2021. I understand Democratic Services want to make an apology and an amendment.
On page 6, you'll notice it says COVID-19 rather than COVID-19. So that's already been amended on the published minutes.
Thank you. Any other comments on the minutes? Councillor Sweeting?
Well, can I thank the clerk for the very detailed and full minutes. They do, however, seem to be taking the place of written reports on various specific items coming to this committee. So can we not help the clerk by asking that reports on service areas are written reports? This is the way that other select committees work, and it would be good to have those written reports rather than the minutes having to go through all of the items that officers go through, and they are then minuted, which is the reason why we've got these pages of very good and detailed minutes.
I take that point, and I'm sure Steve will take that back and discuss with his manager further. Unless, Steve, you want to comment now?
Yeah, well, just a note on that one. The service overview items, because this is a new select committee as of May this year, each head of service was due to come to the committee and present a service overview or service introduction of their area. Those aren't in the formal reports, they're in the formal presentations. We have another one tonight for highways. Those are the only items that will be scheduled to get only as verbal updates. So going forward, as I believe next month we'll have the last one from ASBET, they will be getting written reports.
Well, can I come back on another issue?
You could have done if you had raised the comment first, and I allowed you to, but I will allow you to now.
Well, we have got the report on ASBET coming to the next meeting, which you say is going to be an oral report. Well, seeing that we have got some very grave concerns about ASBET, as highlighted in the internal audit report published only in July, which goes through that the service needs to update policies and procedures. It needs to manage.
Can I just stop you there, because we are now discussing a report that's coming to a future meeting.
And I'm saying, can it please be a written report rather than an oral report? So it is linked to my previous comment.
I'm sure that the report will come through in a format that the committee will find suitable. I'm sure Steve will take that comment on board. And mentioning the fact that has been moved, the ASBET report has been moved from this evening to October. And the reason for that is due to changes that are currently ongoing within the department. It was discussed and decided that we would move that to October because there really wouldn't be sufficient time to get a report to us and do the work that's currently going on within ASBIT. And that'll become more clear in the October meeting. So we will move that to October. Any other comments for the minutes? No? Okay, can we take those as agreed? Thank you. Okay, to confirm, items of business marked as Part 1 will be considered in public, and the items marked Part 2 will be considered in private. All items of this meeting are Part 1. We now move on to agenda item 5, which is Select Committee Review, the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure and Future Policy Direction for the Borough. This is the review that this committee has decided to undertake for this year. And we have a brief intro from Steve Clark from Democratic Services. And then we have Poonam Pathak from the Interim Head of Highways. So welcome to our meeting this evening. So I will hand over first to Steve, and then we come to you, Poonam. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So the report in front of members is a brief research report looking at the national context as things stand with EVs and EV infrastructure, and then also drilling down into the local context and a lot of publicly available information about electric vehicles in London and the borough itself. We also have Poonam Pathak here as the Interim Head of Highways, who will be able to field any questions and also give a brief update on electric vehicle provision in the borough. Poonam.
Before you present, Poonam, can I just say to councillors, can we just let Poonam present first? And if we have questions, can we save those to the end so that we don't break the flow of the presentation that's being given? Thank you. Poonam.
Thank you, Chair. I have gone through the report Steve has prepared, which is quite good in terms of what is going on EV area in the nationally and locally. In terms of what we are doing as a council within Hillingdon, the EV charging provision and strategy, we are currently working very closely with the Cabinet Member for Public Safety and Transportation, Councillor Riley, and so we meet our obligation under the carbon reduction that Borough intended to achieve. We have undertaken a soft market test to understand the business model and the funding available in this area, and we have also communicated with other boroughs to understand their experience and what they are currently doing. We have learned that there is the funding available comes under 75% of grant under OX funding, they call it, which is on-street residential charging scheme, and 25% to be paid by the borough. We are also exploring available framework to engage with EV suppliers and developing the specification for installation and maintenance based on a fully funded option, which means option for a zero cost to the council and the income generation from the profit share from the contract. So in terms of demand, we have looked into the demand. There is not massively increase on the demand currently. We understand it's going to grow very fast. Our aim is to replace the existing EV facility we have. We have currently 11 sites with 30 EVs, and they are very old, and some of them are not in working condition. So we want to improve them with a new, modern, improved equipment, and as well as we want to identify the new location where EV demands and requirements are, and the solution for the solution that will maximize the usage. For example, we have a car park, housing estate, on-street parking facilities. So this is just a generic overview what we are doing currently. We are doing preparing for the tender. So we are hoping to have somebody on board swiftly. So I'm happy to take back any advices you may have for us to review and consider. That will help me greatly. Thank you.
Thank you, Poonam. I've got just a couple of points, if I can pick up. I can see that within the report it's very clear that nearly a third of households in the borough don't have off-street parking, which we know. And we know that there's various issues with terraced and flatted developments. But also on page 11, it says the council has received a modest but growing volume of requests. It would have been nice to know the actual number of requests that we'd received as a council in that part, because we know that it's a modest number. Also from page 13, where it states Hillingdon is in the top 20% nationally for the number of EV charging devices per 100,000 population. That's 64.4 devices per 100,000. And there's a list between us and other councils and other boroughs. And then it mentions about there are 6 electric car charging point connectors available at Hillingdon Fire Station. I assume that's just for the use of those that work at the fire station. So I'd be very surprised if members of the public can just drive into the fire station to charge their vehicle.
I don't think so. So I can find out on whether they are for public. Yeah.
Those numbers aren't just publicly available. EVCPs, those are in total within the borough.
Yeah, which technically, when you think about it, skews the actual figure, because there's probably more than just the fire station that have got these points that are not available to the general public. And although the employees of that company may be using them, they may not necessarily be Hillingdon's population. We may have people coming from Harrow that work at a company in Uxbridge, but nobody else can go and use those in Uxbridge. So I think those figures, although very good, I feel they're slightly skewed, personally.
I fully agree, Councillor. Yeah.
That's my view on what I got from the report. Any other questions? Councillor Sweetin, then I'll take Councillor Tuckwell, Councillor Mathers, Councillor Lewis.
It's just a comment about the detailed map that we have, the coloured map.
Yep.
Yes, it's interesting to see, what's happening in boroughs abutting us. But I would have found it more interesting, seeing that we are concentrating on Hillingdon, to have the map of Hillingdon. That then could have been much clearer, I think. We could then have had an audit showing exactly where these points are. But I don't think that's useful to us. This map is not really useful to us in this particular stage of our major review. So could we in future, through you, Chair, have a map which just shows Hillingdon so that we can get a handle on where we are and how the points are dispersed, because having them all clustered in a certain area might not be helpful to other areas of the borough.
Yeah, we will be preparing a map soon when we have a new provider on board with the new EVs, as well as what we will be proposing, the new sites as well. So that will be coming soon, so we will distribute to the members as well.
And that will just be specific? Okay, thank you. Councillor Tuckwell.
Yeah, and thank you for taking us through a very early dipping our toe into this review. So it's a really good start. But I've got a couple of questions. And you mentioned earlier on about learning from other boroughs, neighbouring boroughs. I'm just interested to know, what are the emerging lessons that are coming out from other local authorities?
Learning from other authorities, as well as learning from the suppliers. We have identified there are different models where you can chip in either the lease area to be taken by the supplier, and we get the long-term and they maintain end-to-end of the equipment, as well as replace it in timely manner, and also giving us the revenue, yearly revenue as well, and also identifying the available funding from the central government. We have Ox funding. Mostly people are sort of going for Ox funding, where the residential area, as Chair has already mentioned about the residential areas, this is one of the focus we are focusing on currently, how we can give them benefit of EVs where there are no driveways or there is no front garden for them to charge. So this is one of the things we will be taking it forward.
Provided lights don't go out, of course. Councillor Tuckwell, you've got supplementary to that.
It's a big challenge for all local authorities, so thanks for sharing that answer. The other question I had really was, what percentage of Hillingdon's fleet is currently electric?
I don't have that figure, Councillor Tocqueville, so I will get back to you. I will find out what percentage we have currently, so I'll get back to you on that.
No, thank you for that.
Councillor Mathers.
Thank you, Chair. Just to continue from Councillor Tuckwell's question in that, if I may, it would be useful to get an idea also of the kind of projections, roughly, in the timescales, so we can see, and I suppose with that, we were talking about the points that may not be available to the public. Within the council's operation, will their charging points be just private, or will they be trying to hybrid some so that they're possibly used by the public? Although, if you want to charge up a council vehicle, you don't want to be waiting for a neighbour. But it's that kind of. It would be interesting to see if there is any innovation around that. And if I may, that was more a comment. If I may just ask, I've just lost my track. Sorry. I know that it's not totally within the scope of this committee, but it'd be useful to get within this kind of scoping comments on maybe some developments within planning and housing development around domestic charging points, so it can give a fuller picture to the committee about what's going on in sort of private dwellings, etc., and also the standard of model that would be used. Because I know, for example, there are developers at the moment who are retrospectively applying for planning permission that is putting in a less, now I'm not very good at this electricity-wise, a lower wattage or ampage, whichever one it is, if I may have made those words up, sorry, Chair, when in fact they promised something better, which the impact on the residents, and also this could be taken into consideration on the street, is that the charging time is longer, and therefore if they're on Economy 7 it's cheaper, but in this case it has to then go into the daytime. So just a context, not a detailed report on that aspect, but a context that provides the committee more knowledge, and also how the standards will be sort of led by example from the street, if that's helpful.
I have discussed with Steve already that I think it would be useful to have the head of planning actually come before the committee to tell us what's going on within the planning aspect of it, what we've currently got in our policies, and are they being actually adhered to, and if they're not, what actions are we taking. So that will be part of the scoping, definitely, and a further witness, most definitely. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chairman. I think actually this is a timely report, but I do think there's actually a great urgency to it, because actually we're 8 years out from all new vehicles being electric. So that has implications, I would have thought, on the amount of petrol stations that are going to be viable within the borough. Are we talking to the oil companies about putting charging points into petrol stations? I think we should be. On Councillor Sweeting's point about the map, I think it is useful to put it into context how we are doing against our neighbouring boroughs. I would have thought that it would be useful to show the boundary of the borough on this one. And I also note, to my slight consternation, that actually the vast majority of the charging points are in the south of the borough. And I think actually in the north of the borough we're prejudiced by not having an equal distribution. And I think that whilst it's amusing because the opposition always point out how badly treated, although they aren't, the south of the borough is, in this particular instance it is a key critical resource that we are going to need to have. So I think we need to pick up on improving in the north and getting an even distribution across the borough. And actually, I wonder whether we should be considering putting it onto the risk register. The fact that if we don't get this right, being the highest car ownership in London, it is a major issue to us. So perhaps the reason we haven't got as many charging points in the north is we're more countryside as you get out towards Harefield, and we have quite a lot of green belt. But I still think it is something that we need to flag up, that their failure to get this right actually offers a tremendous disadvantage to the borough in terms of housing, living conditions and employment within the borough. 8 years is going to fly by. It's really going to fly by. So I'm sorry, I'm rambling on a little bit, but Councillor Mather's point about planning, the government have announced that all new housing will be built with charging points. That's an obligation for all developers to have. So we'll see. We need to monitor that and see how it comes towards planning and implementation. And I think it's great that you're asking James Rogers to come down. So I rambled on a lot, but I think there were some points in there somewhere.
Thank you. I would imagine I'm hoping that when the head of planning comes in as a witness, the reason there are more points within the south is because they've implemented those as part of planning conditions for any large developments that happen in the south rather than the north. As for the risk register, that would be down to Cabinet and Cabinet members to place on the risk register. And Audit Committee, it has to go through them. You're right, there's a lot of greenbelt within the north of the borough and probably not many areas to put the charging points. But I'm sure Poonam will take on board what you've mentioned. I know that Shell have gone through, not within London, etc., but they have gone through a process where they are looking at what they class as redundant petrol stations and changing them into nothing but EV points. But I don't know how far they've got with that, but that's something that we can certainly look at and tap into. Poonam, is there anything you just wish to add before I bring in Councillor Sullivan and come back to Councillor Mather?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Lewis. Equal distribution, I take that on board, and as the Chair has mentioned, could be because of the large development in the south. Our EV, future EV, will be data-led where there is a demand. Definitely we'll look at where the demand is, where people are buying new cars, and if they have off-street parking facilities. So there will be a mixture of things where we will be analysing before we introduce new EVs. So it will be all data-led. Where is the demand? Because obviously the new service provider would like to see where they can generate more money from the usage. If there is no usage, then it's no point having the EV facility as well. If the people can do out of street into their house, that's where mainly the people will be charging. So it depends on what type of model, as Councillor Mather has said. There are different models and different speed. You can charge in 1 to 2 hours to 45 minutes to overnight. So we will be looking at more in detail what type of facility is required where. So that will be all in our specification when we go in tender. Hopefully we'll have a supplier on board soon.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan, you indicated. Then I'm going to go to Councillor Mathers, then I'll come to Councillor Barnes, Councillor Tuckwell, and then I'll go back to Councillor Sweeting. So, Councillor Sullivan, and I've got to remember that order as well, at my age.
Just a small point. On your charging infrastructure, you're talking about installing electric points at properties. Have you any idea how much the cost per installation would be?
We don't have a figure yet, but it can be anywhere between 10 to 20,000. But that's the generic. So it depends on what type, because if you go for higher speed, you need a 3-phase the electricity supply instead of 1 phase for below 3 to 7 kV. So it depends what type of model we will be going for. So when we have a supply on board, then we will know exactly how much per unit will cost. So,
and the other point you raise also is about it hasn't been raised, or the council has never received a resident petition asking for communal electric points. If this was raised, a petition, would the council consider it?
We have to go through the due process as a petition anyway. So whether that will be council will identify that as a need. So yeah. Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mathers.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose looking at the map with, obviously the air quality being worse in the south and there being a number of charging points around Heathrow Airport, particularly as there's a drive by the Mayor of London to improve air quality, and there are lots more private hire vehicles with hybrid or electric charging. I'm wondering what it was part of the report, if there could be a looking at resourcing or ways of equipping the council to develop more corporate partnerships to maybe share some of the costs of this, particularly around large partners who want to be less environmentally damaging, such as Heathrow Airport. Just maybe an avenue to consider.
Thank you. I'm sure Poonam will take that back as part of the review. I've got Councillor Barnes, then Councillor Tuckwell, then Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you. Poonam, it was just a couple of questions and something that actually Stuart Mathers has prompted me on. I just wanted to know, you were saying about the tenders, roughly what sort of time scale is that for the tender process?
Tender, we are currently doing the specification.
Right.
When we go for tender, is 3 weeks tender period.
Mm-hmm.
Then the evaluation. As we stand, we might be ready for January cabinet.
Okay.
That's what we are hoping for, if everything sort of goes as we plan. So.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And I just wanted to know about you were saying you had spoken to the other sort of councils. Have you learnt anything from them through their tender process and you know, people that they've been discussing that they've said don't even bother going there and that kind of stuff?
Definitely. After speaking to all the experience from other council, we have looked into so many frameworks. What is the best framework for us? So we are looking into that as well. What will be the best after looking at their experience? So we don't want to go backward. Rather than we'll sort of start from how they have gone through in terms of their tendering process. So there are lots of frameworks available. There is a TfL framework and there is CSS framework. There are many frameworks within where we can chip in. So that's what we're looking at currently.
Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, knowing how much this committee loves a map, we do love a map. Just thinking, it might be useful going forward to have some kind of illustration which sort of shows the sort of distribution of the 34,500 non-charging address or off-street households that do not have off-street parking. So it might be just an idea to have some, they haven't got to be specific, but just something that gives us a sort of a geographical illustration of where these places are, because that might help us to understand, is there a particular type of geography or landscape which lends itself to one kind of solution, and then there might be another which has a different type of solution. So I think that might be just worth having that, you know, as a part of the review, so that we can see the scale of the problem, which is what it is. So that's just a suggestion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckwell. Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you, Chair. There are a couple of sentences in this report that I find rather concerning. One is on page 11. How many paragraphs down? Quite a few paragraphs. Anyway, I quote, "It is important to note that there is no duty placed upon local authorities to provide electric charging points." So it's not statutory. And then on page 15, the Local Government Association has also put its oar in by saying that they do not anticipate that councils either want or need to become the long-term default provider for electric vehicle charge points. So although Hillingdon and no doubt other councils are stepping forward into this, one needs to ask whether government is likely to make it a statutory duty on councils, because there seems to be wriggle room here. And I know that some councils, maybe not Hillingdon, but some councils would find it able to wriggle out of their responsibilities if it's not a statutory duty. The second thing I'd like to ask is about the witnesses for our meetings following this one. Have they been chosen? And will we be advised before the next meeting who they may well be? Because I know that there's at least one that I know of that has got a lot of detailed information on this very subject, and it would be good to have, you know, residents with if you like, a normal point of view that comes from residents that do not have specific backgrounds, and maybe we have got residents that have got specific backgrounds that would be very welcome to provide that information to this committee. So the first thing is about, you know, is it likely that this is going to be eventually statutory? And if not, why not?
whether it's going to be statutory or not, we would have to wait and see as a council. That's the first point. We cannot say to government, you have to make this statutory and before we're going to do anything. Hillingdon have always taken the lead on a lot of innovation, and Hillingdon will not shirk back from looking at its role within EVs. The administration has always put residents first, and they will continue to do so whilst we're looking at EVs. Witnesses, they will be discussed with me as the chairman first through Democratic Services, and certainly we'll be looking at any companies we can get in, what expertise we can get in, and this committee will definitely be made aware of who the witnesses are going to be before the next meeting. So, yes. Councillor Lewis.
I'm picking up on your comments, Chairman. I'm just wondering why we think it should be a council obligation. I mean, we don't sell any other types of energy, and we don't... I mean, I can see why the oil companies or power providers, the electric companies, should be obligated to provide. I mean, where does it stop? Do we have to install broadband into areas that have poor coverage? I can't see why, actually, it will ever become a council obligation. Can I pick up on Poonam's comments about the frameworks? Is there a framework, or is there a framework being developed for PowerPoints?
There are currently few frameworks. There is a Kent County Council framework. There is a TfL framework as well. There is under the CSS Crown CSS, the government one. There is a one DPS within that. They specifically it's for EV. So there are various frameworks. We are looking into what will be the best for the council. So hopefully we will go one of the frameworks.
But that's for council points.
That's for the council points. Yes, that's right.
There was money from T5 given to the Heathrow villages, or a trust set up, and I wondered whether that could be used for any developments within the Heathrow villages. It's finished? Oh, okay. Well, okay. And the other point is, I don't think we can just pick on Heathrow Airports Limited. We might want to talk to some of the airlines, because they're the ones who have to actually offset on their green, on their fuels. And so if they're flying out of Heathrow, they could actually pay for the points.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Obviously, we're speculating. We know the energy crisis we're in currently. We just got to wait and hope that within 8 years' time, the grid can still cope when all these hundreds of EVs are suddenly going to appear. But we're getting prepared for it, so we're going to be there going forward. Are there any further questions for Poonam before we wrap up this report? No? Thank you, Poonam, for presenting to us, and thank you for the answers, and I hope that some of the comments and feedback we provided will help you and your department moving forward with your reviews as well. So thank you. Moving on, the annual complaints, obviously the manager's not here, as I said, is running late, and this may be deferred to the next meeting so that we give it our full attention. So we'll move straight on again. It's going to be Poonam again, I understand, doing the service overview for highways. So Poonam, welcome again.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair and the members for inviting me to provide you a brief update on the highway services provided by my team. I'm Poonam Pathak. I'm interim head of highways currently, and highway team is responsible for the maintenance and management of highway assets such as adopted highway, pavement, road, anything on the highway basically, like street furnitures, guardrails, signs, street lighting, illuminated bollard, or that sort of thing. My team is basically responsible for maintenance of those assets. So going into my another slide, I have a team of 3 team within my remit. They deliver the highway services. I'll provide you the detail of the team structure. So I have Isaac, who is the delivery manager, and Wayne, he manages the network operation team, and Gurmit Matharu is a highway asset and performance manager. Just to briefly give you overview of each team, what they deliver. Highways delivery team is responsible for highway design, ranging from town centre improvement to road safety schemes, bus priority, providing road humps or speed cushion, bus route, cycle lane facility, as well as implementing those schemes when they design it. Of all the highway scheme, including Borough principal planned maintenance work, 278 with the development work, and they deliver all the schemes within the council. And the team is also responsible for vehicle crossover application and implementation of vehicle crossover. We had a new policy which was introduced in 2019 in terms of vehicle crossover. We are currently reviewing the policy as well now. Network operation team is responsible for all the reactive maintenance work. They undertake the routine safety inspection as per our inspection regime, street work inspection, coordination of the utility work to tackle congestion and disruption on the road network. Any claims, be it the claim to the council or we claiming from the resident or the people who damage the pavement, public right-of-way maintenance, winter maintenance service, gritting, as well as the emergency response services. We have a team of operatives based at the Hillingdon depot. They do all the repair work for us, and we have a term service contractor, O'Hara Brother, to deliver the highway maintenance services as well. Highway asset management team is mainly responsible for updating the council policy on highway strategy to meet its obligation under the Highways Act or New Road and Street Works Act or Traffic Management Act, as well as Reservoir Act, which we have to implement. Also, the team is responsible for maintaining and managing the highway asset in the most effective way within the budget available to the team. They do the performance management as well for the highway service delivered by the team, as well as all the service provider, like we have a term service contractor in terms of highway delivery as well as street lighting. So the team measures all the performance and they prepare a forward plan for the major works, for the footway, carriageway, and we have an annual gully cleansing operation, ditch maintenance program, and street lighting, asset maintenance, highway structure maintenance, such as bridges, footbridges, so they maintain all that program. The next slide is just to give you what we own in terms of the council, the asset we have. We maintain the roads and pavement. We have approximately 700 kilometre of road and 905 kilometre of the pavement. We have around 31,000 street lighting assets, which include street light as well as other illuminated bollards or the beacon lights, or that as such. We have around 260 bridges and the structures, which includes footbridges, bridges, culverts, retaining walls, and those type of structure. We have around 34,000 road gullies, which we do cyclic cleaning program, and street coordination, insurance claim, and these type of the service responsibilities. Based on what we submitted last SIFA return, our highway asset showed as 1.12 billion worth, so which makes it vital asset for the council to manage and maintain it properly. So these assets are not only provide the service, it also provide the contribution to the economic development and the growth, and bringing improvement social benefit by providing access to employment, social, health and education service. So they are the vital asset for the borough. Just give you, this is the category of the road network. So we have the road maintained by highway agency, M25, M4, so we are not responsible for those roads. We have a TfL owned road, A40 312. So all principal road, classified road, unclassified road, and public right-of-way we maintain. And we have other roads which are not maintained by the council, like housing estate, maintained by the housing team, not by my team. And we have private roads within the borough as well. Just to give you sort of why do we need to maintain the network, then obviously we understand well-maintained roads are safer and prevent the accident of vital importance in the economic growth and development. However, there are more to it. We have a duty of care under Highways Act 1980 under Section 41 to maintain this road, all the adopted highway, and Section 58 gives the statutory defence to the claim if we get the claim from third party. So it's very important for my team to maintain, to ensure the compliance and fulfil the duties under the Act. So this is quite crucial for us. It's a duty of care. It's a statutory obligation for us to maintain the road. So highway maintenance, what are the functions we do? Due to the use and the time, the highway infrastructure is becoming aged. The roads are getting very old and deteriorating very fast. This means we need to maintain them in a regular basis and renew them in the longer term. So we need that structures program. So in order to ensure the council compliant with our duties, we manage the highway network effectively by undertaking reactive maintenance program, regulatory function, as well as the planned maintenance forward program that we prepare. So under the reactive maintenance, the road network is inspected as scheduled on the hierarchy. Based on the hierarchy we have, which is based on the road network type and the usage. We carry out the defect repair like trip, pothole, damage to assets, which is based on the risk, the investigatory level criteria we have based on the severity of the defect and the danger it provides. So we, in order to fulfill our duty, we have an emergency crew who carry out the emergency repair, and they are there within 4 hours when there is any defect identified. So this safety inspection is one of the crucial things for us. So we reviewed our inspection policy in 2018. This was following from the changes to well-maintained highway infrastructure code of practice, which was changed in 2018 by UKRLG. So this was, they gave all the local authority 2 years to comply with the new code. So this came into effect. We introduced this policy in 2018, which gives the guidance on the maintenance and management of highway asset and how we should be inspecting and how the defects should be repaired. So based on the criteria set out in the code of practice, our policy is in line with the code. So all our adopted highway within the borough are scheduled for inspection, and inspection are designed to identify all the defects that could create a danger and serious inconvenience to user of the highway. So in terms of also furthermore on the highway inspection, the hierarchy and the frequency of inspection adopted by us reflects the need and priority and actual usage of each highway in the borough. And frequency has taken into account the national guidance, as I mentioned, the code of practice. So the defect identifiers are categorized, depends on the risk and impact associated with it. And we have an investigatory level, which I will brief later on, that gives the guidance to the inspector whether to treat any defect or they can just leave it and monitor the defects. So there are some photographs I have given you just to give you a bit of a brief on the service issues we sort of, the inspector will pick up when they are inspecting the road. So the first one is just a pothole, 40 mm pothole, which could lead to any claims. So the inspector will raise order to repair those defects. The second one is the trip. So the trigger for the trip or the footway defects are 20 mm trip or pothole. And third one is the tree root damages. So this is quite a big issue for us currently. So you can see in the first photograph the gully is fully blocked with the tree roots, and the second photograph we have the tree root causing a trip and the potholes on the footway and the carriageway. And the other photograph I have here is the carriageway edge deterioration, where we don't have the edging at the back. Due to the loading, the road will fall on the side, creating the problem. So this is another problems where we don't have enough edging, so we'll get these sort of defects as well. And the other one is the guardrail, damaged guardrail, so accident damage possibly. So this one is the rechargeable work. So under the Section 133 of Highways Act, as well as the Section 6 of London Local Authority and Transport for London, allows us to make good of any damages caused by the work on the land adjacent to the highway and recover the expenses incurred. So we are closely working with ASBID team to recover these damages. Last year we agreed a new process to deal with these claims effectively, so we are working very closely with ASBID team. So going into, just to give you, not all the defects are repaired. It is recognized that on any highway network, a multitude of minor defects will exist, so that might not cause a risk to the safety of highway as well as the public. So it's not practical for us to repair all the defects that in the highway for the funding to manage our funding as well. So it's not going to be when we get the report of all the defects, we might not be repairing all the defects. So there will be some defect where it's a safe is to leave it. So we will sort of monitor those sort of defects. So this is the criteria that our inspector will be looking at. So the first one is investigatory level. So they will be looking at 40 mil carriageway defect and 20 mil, as I mentioned to you previously, the pothole on the footways. Any bollard damage, guardrail damage, misaligned that items on the highway, they will be issuing order. And the response time will relate to what type of defect they are. So we have a Cat 1 defect, which is the emergency call-out, will attend 4 hours. And then Category 2 defect are divided into 3. So anything which are high Category 2, we repair it within 14 days. And where the category medium are repaired within 28 days, and where we can leave it longer, we will repair them in 3 months. So it's based on the risk score when the inspector go out and they look at it, where the defect is, how deep is the defect, and how dangerous is the defect. They will analyze the risk and they will issue order accordingly. So this, another slide I have, just to give you a bit of a brief on the Rhino patch. We have a team of 10-man crew at the Hillingdon depot. They carry out all our reactive maintenance, and they do emergency call-out, as well as they do, we have 33 screens across the borough, and they clean those screens as well weekly. So this team not only carry out the emergency work, they carry out the Rhino patch. How the Rhino patch works is a sustainable infrared heating technology. So it heats up the material, and then it uses and recycles the existing material and repairs it, so you don't need to bring in new material. So it's quite sustainable method of doing the patch. So our teams are qualified, and they do this sort of patch in our borough. So this is quite good in terms of carbon reduction. So another main function we deliver is a winter maintenance. So my team is responsible for providing a winter maintenance service on adopted highway throughout the Hillingdon. We operate these over 24-hour service between October to March. So we have 22 staff on rota basis. We get the support from West Management team as well, because we have only 10-man crew at the depot. So we have 7 greeter out of them, and then 1 mini greeter for the wet restricted area. And we received the waived forecast from Meteor Group. Our main aim is to keep our primary routes, which are 7 predetermined grading routes, free from ice and snow by precautionary salting, which melts any ice and snow already formed. So that's our aim is. So we have around 190 miles, which covers 46% of borough adopted in the grouting route. And we have already ordered our salt for this year. We have approximately 4,000 tonnes of salt in the stock. Footways are not specially included in predetermined determined salting for precautionary salting. They are only treated once the snow has settled and during the period of prolonged freezing condition on priority basis, such as town centres, hospitals, schools and bus stops. So we don't do precautionary salting for the footways. So these are mainly related to the highways. So going into the street lighting, they are maintained. We have a term service contractor, J. McCann. They are based at the Hillingdon Road Depot. They undertake a monthly night scout as part of the contract, and they repair all the defects they identify. So they manage all the defect in the street lighting side of it. We carried out borough-wide LED program back in 2019. And currently we are implementing column replacement program based on the risk, high risk asset, as our street lighting columns are very old and they are deteriorating, and so we have a risk based approach in terms of replacing the columns within the borough. We have also identified new funding, or we have requested for the funding where we can reduce the carbon saving with the LED replacement. Although we completed the LED lights across the borough, there were some decorative lights especially. They were not part of LED program before, so we are planning to have them done possibly next year when the funding will be available to us. These slides give you a bit of information on what are the defect type in terms of street lighting. For example, lamp column door missing, illuminated bollards damage, which you will see most of the time on sometime when there is an accident damage, they just knock over. Light out if anything is not working. Illuminated sign damaged, any no entry sign or anything like that where you have a light on top. And any Belisha bacon on the zebra crossing out. So these are the typical type of street lighting defect that our contractor will be repair. This is a street light. Now the structures. Our structure asset management team, they manage all our structure owned by the council. There are many structures within the Hillingdon. They are owned by other third parties, for example, TfL, London Underground, Network Rail, Canal and River Trust, and Highway Agency. We are only responsible for the borough-owned highway structures. Likewise, I said there was a change on the Code of Practice in 2016 that has impacted the inspection, how we do it in terms of highway structures as well. So previously we used to do general inspection and principal inspection of our structures in certain duration, 2 years and 5 years. Now the new Code of Practice suggests a risk-based inspection. So our engineers and the structure manager looks at the risk assessment, and that's how we are implementing our inspection schedule for our highways structure inspection. The team is also responsible for monitoring the abnormal load activity in the borough. The number of applications we receive within the borough is quite high, as we have M4 and M25 adjoining to the borough. So the number is quite high. So they might not be coming inside the borough, but the number of applications we receive is really high. So they discharge, they have to monitor all that movement within the borough. And they also discharge the duty under Reservoir Act in maintaining and management of Ruislip Lido Dam. So they have a regular inspection. They do underwater survey, so make sure the dam is sort of working condition. and also monitor the water level within the Ruislip Lido, and also plan and maintain the bridge repairs. Just to give you a bit of information on the bridge repair, currently we have Trout Road Bridge repair undergoing. We are aiming to complete this by end of this month, by end of September. We have another bridge design ongoing. Yedding Lane is over Yedding Brook, so we are in the detailed design phase for this bridge. So in terms of planned maintenance work, all our roads and pavements are resurfaced as part of the planned program work. We normally have a yearly program, so we sort of do a forward program and get the approval, and that's what we implement every year. As well as we have a cyclic gully cleansing operation, and under which at least once a year we clean all the gullies. In the principal road we clean the gullies twice a year, and we have a critical gully list which we clear 4 times a year. And any damages we identify while cleaning these gullies, we carry out a regular repair program as well. On that, we have another line marking program delivered as part of the planned maintenance. We have a quarterly program which we issue to our contractor to replace or refresh the line marking within the borough. And other schemes we deliver is town centre enhancement scheme, column replacement, bridge maintenance. As I mentioned, Trout Road bridge repair is underway currently. So how do we prioritise the road and pavement? This is quite a big thing for the team. So the council currently, we have a prioritisation criteria which is primarily based on its condition. We have recently commissioned the survey this year. We are hoping to get the survey back soon. So, and once we have a survey back, we will be analysing the report and the factors such as engineering assessment to identify the proper surface treatment, and safety inspector's report, the insurance claim, road traffic accident side and petition, resident inquiry, and the members' inquiry. We'll sort of look at all these things before we do the priority listing. The outcome of all these will be used for the future program. So once we have our data back, we are hoping by end of the month, not then October 1st to October. Once we have that data back, then we will be crunching the number and seeing where each road will be in terms of the priority, and based on the funding available, then we will be putting forward the program for next year. This year, we have implemented, and some of them are underway. We have 44 roads resurfacing and 66 footway resurfacing carried out, or it was planned for this year. So that was our sort of, the main function. We have a regulatory function which is managed by our network management team. Just to give you overview on what are the regulatory functions. So network operation team has to deliver this regulatory function as required by DFT under the Traffic Management Act. So this is something we need to discharge our DT, and this is statutory requirement for us to carry out. So we received a number of permit application from the utility company to dig out our pavement. So approximately we get 12 to 14,000 per annum, but this year has been quite a different year for us. The number of application has increased. Maybe because we have planned work like Affinity Water, they are doing the meter, changing the meters within the borough, and we have 5G network upgrade ongoing, and the Hillingdon Hospital, they are doing upgrade as well. There is quite a lot of services coming to the Hillingdon Hospital, so there has been quite a lot of activity going on within the borough, so that has increased quite a lot of application. And this leads to our utility inspection. When we have application and the road is dug out, our inspector go out and inspect. And if they see they are not complying to the condition applied to the permit, they issue fine, and there has been quite a lot of increase on the fines as well, and the money we have generated through the fine this year. The team also provide the licenses for skip and scaffolding, and we also work closely with trading licenses team in issuing the highway trading licenses, like the summer, winter fairs and stuff like that, wherever there is a street festivals. So we issue those licenses as well. In order to complete the work, some of the time the utility company requires the road closure, so the team also do the road temporary traffic orders to close the road, so to facilitate the work carried out by the utility company. So the officers also attend the regular meeting with the service providers, like utility companies. There are various types of meetings they will have. They have a street works coordination meeting, and last year the permitting system was changed by DFT to street manager, so the system has been changed, and anyone, even the resident, can look into any permit on the website. They have launched one.net network website, so everything goes into the DFT portal rather than individual portal. I think there has been quite a lot of change on how the permitting system used to work in the past since last year. So they have a pre-application meeting, site meetings with the utility company, so that there is less disruption within the network. And the team carries out various types of inspection. They call it ABC. It depends on what stages of the work they are carrying out, whether they are digging or they have completed or is outside, is the last 2 years after the work complete, so before they sign up the work. So various, they have given ABC type of inspections for these type of works. So we have an income target of 1.2 million to generate every year through permitting schemes. So this year we are hoping we will be exceeding our income target because of all the activities going on within the network. So this just gives you how do we ensure the network is safety. As I mentioned before, we have a regular inspection regime where we identify all the defects that might cause the problem or issues to the users, and we issue the licensing, and we have enforcement as well. We work very closely with ASBIT team. We have a responsive maintenance where we do the defect repair and emergency call out. So on the various way we ensure our network is safe for people to use. So there are lots of challenges moving forward, as we have an aging network and deterioration of highway has caused due to the various other reasons as well, not only the aging, and one of them is climate change. So increased rainfall we are experiencing lately has caused issues within our network as well, when the water enters into the pavement layers, that causes the potholes and stuff like that. So and also the extreme winter conditions, that will have an impact on the network, and also the load, traffic loads as well. And we have seen lots of load has increased. That has impacted the network serviceability. And not mentioning the utility work as well. Utility company they have a statutory right to install the apparatus in the highway. The trenching and reinstatement of highways result in the surface and structural damages and reduce the life of the road and pavement. So there is a major issue with the utility works within the network. So we are nearly to end now. The way forward, now just to give you what we are planning moving forward now is the team is preparing asset management plan, which will facilitate a long-term forward program in order to improve the highway network. We have been doing yearly program recently or till now. So we are planning to have a forward program, at least to develop a 5-year program. So instead of going on the worst first approach, we would like to go for optimal level of spending in terms of which are worst first, as well as preventative maintenance. So the roads which are not very bad will stay not bad, rather than going into the red zone, which is sort of worse. So we want to stop the deterioration before it gets bad. So we will be going through the asset management principle rather than sort of doing the worst first. So that was our main focus. When we have a data back, we'll be looking at more in detail how we can optimize the funding we have and stop deterioration moving forward. So that is the one plan we have. Other one we will be planning is new material, such as warm mix, tarmac. So currently the tarmac, when they mix it to the very high temperature. And what they are planning, or there are material available where they don't have to mix it in very high temperature. They mix it in low temperature with the same strength. That reduces the carbon emission. So that those new material we are trialing, planning to trial moving forward. So there are other material like recycled material on the pavement, which our term service contractor, they have developed as well. So we will be trialing some of this material moving forward. So that's all from myself. Now, thank you very much. So I will take all the questions you may have. I'll try to answer them as much as I can. If not, then I'll come back to you soon. So thank you.
Thank you, Poonam. It was a very detailed overview. Just a few comments from me. I'm glad to see that in slide 7 you used a picture of West Drayton Bridge, because that was one of my pets when I was the cabinet member, and when we first switched it on. When we were trying to get the lights to work, they didn't, but then when it did, it was spectacular. I'm also pleased to see that you're still using the Rhino patch repair machines, because again, I brought those. But I just want to say the winter gritting service are such an excellent team. For the borough, they keep the borough moving when conditions really do become bad. And I can always tell when I'm leaving the boundaries of Hillingdon and going across to another council's area where the conditions aren't so good. And literally it is only over a bridge down Ivor Lane. So that tells you the council I go to. Just one word from me on the new material. Good idea with the carbon saving and everything, if it's effective and it works, and it gives us the same stability, but is it cost effective compared to what we do currently? You know, because sometimes these new materials, you get the benefit because it's carbon effective, but by the way, it's going to cost you twice the price. So is this a cost effective new material, or are we just going for it because it's more carbon effective?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have requested our term service contractor to give me the rate for these, the warm mix material. So once I get the rate and the benefit, then definitely that's something I will be analysing, whether it's cost effective for us to have that material. Definitely there will be additional cost to it. It's not going to be the same cost as the traditional type of tarmac material, unless every single borough and every single resurfacing is used well mixed, because what they have to do is they have to keep changing whenever the supplier is delivering this material. They have to keep changing their temperature, so it's not cost effective for the supplier. That's why the cost differs. So if everybody start using, definitely the cost will come down, but that's something we will be reviewing. I
appreciate that, you know, but sometimes carbon saving compared to it could cost you 3 times the price of what you're doing at the moment. Your carbon saving is only, say, 0.5%, 1%. So I think that needs to be clarified for us as a committee at some point, please. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Poonam, for that presentation, and it was so detailed. I mean, I'm amazed that you've got time to come to this meeting, frankly. I mean, there's so much to do. I wanted to sort of talk about the resurfacing of the pavements, or the pavements in general. And obviously with our sort of ageing population in the borough and everywhere else, and a lot of our aged population walk, they don't always get in their cars, and lots of them have been tripping over, and I'm sure everybody who's been sitting around this table get that and get those inquiries. I just wanted to know, I know that we have our limit of the 20 millimetres. I mean, I've had residents that they don't even need that much. They need a tiny bit, and their parent has fallen over. Firstly, on that, have you received, what's the sort of claims, because I know lots of residents have put in claims for injuries they've had from falling over our pavements, and has that increased recently, especially with the pandemic, everybody being at home and walking about? And also damaged pavements, are we getting money back from HGVs and whoever it is that ends up parking over the pavement, smashing them up and then driving off? Are we getting our money back from those people?
Thank you, Vice Chair. In terms of our the investigatory level for the pavement, we have to strike the balance whether we can afford. If we reduce the investigatory level, then we might be spending millions of pounds just to repair the pavement, because we are the second largest borough in London, so our network is the massive network we have. So we need to have that balance right. And also, when we prepared our new inspection policy, we did a consultation with the other boroughs, and we have been working with other London local authorities as well. And this is something all across the board, like 20 mil. So definitely 20 mil is just to give the inspector the guidelines. If they think that is dangerous, if something is back of the pavement and it's not, people are not going to walk around, or next to the say street light pole, and they're not going to go next to the pole, they might leave those defects. So it all depends on whether they are in the walking path, or they analyze the risk at the time. So if they think that is quite risky, then definitely they issue order. But that doesn't mean that's a trigger point for them to analyze that defect. So definitely I take that on board, but we have to have that balance right. I understand what you're saying, but it's all on the funding as well.
Councillor Sweeting, and Councillor Tuckwell, and Councillor Mathers.
If I can go back to item 12, the safety inspections. I have concerns that the safety inspections do not always result in major road and pavement defects being identified. I just bring to the notice of the committee one that I reported in Useley Ward, where the defect was very great.
If this is going to become ward specific,
no,
then
well,
that
it's
should
not
be
my
taken
ward.
outside the meeting.
It's an issue of whether inspections are actually enabled to be undertaken in a way which identifies. It was in such bad condition that the road had to be closed, and it was on a bus route, so the bus had to be rerouted. So if the inspections are actually coming up with the need, how is this one, and it's not the only one I could identify, why is this one not managed to actually be identified? It meant a road closure.
I think without the specifics, that's a bit difficult for Poonam to actually answer. So I think if you want to email Poonam after the meeting, the actual location and area, I'm sure Poonam will get you a very detailed answer as to why that happened, because just being put on the spot with the road in West Drayton that was closed, although she may know which road it was, to be honest. But anyway, if you can email Poonam after, and she'll give you a detailed answer, I'm sure.
If I could have a follow-up, please, concerning just pavement repairs. Sometimes we report it, we all report pavement repairs, as Councillor Barnes has sort of emphasised. And sometimes it needs the report to come back and saying there's no problem, and then you report it again, and then the problem is identified. So this is very frustrating when residents are bringing issues to us, and it takes 2 inspections before it's acknowledged that there is a problem with a particular pavement. How does that happen?
Poonam?
Oh, thank you, Councillor. So one thing I can say without going into detail, there is an inspection procedure given to all the inspector, and they know the criteria for the inspections. If they are not picking up in the first instant, maybe that they deem not dangerous, because sometimes it can be really subjective as well, because one inspector might say, oh, it's not dangerous, other might think is a dangerous, because how you look at it sometimes may differ. Although they are following the same guidelines, the way they analyze, because these inspections are all risk-based inspection, they are not sort of, you have to repair if it is 20 mil or less than 20 mil. So it's all risk-based inspection. So sometimes they may think that's not dangerous, but when other person goes, that might sort of identify the defect. So it can be only that, because I can't tell you specifically why they are doing that. But they all had a training, all the inspector gone through the training, and we have given them the regular briefing on how the inspection done. So I'm sure they might be doing quite a good job, and most of the time, maybe one or two times when they are sort of one and other inspection differ, so I'm sure there is something behind it. So.
Yeah, I think it is difficult sometimes. It's one person's opinion against another person's. It's a bit like a referee giving a penalty and the other one looks at it and says it's not a penalty. So, although two different views, two different outcomes, similar sort of thing with that analogy. But, it can be frustrating, and I take what Councillor Sweeting said there. Councillor Tuckwell.
Just thinking VAR for pavement inspections, maybe. Great presentation, by the way. I've got a whole A4 sheet of questions here, but I'll have to pick the two best ones, because I'm not going to hog the limelight tonight. Just in relation, again, pavements, what's the relationship like with green spaces? Because I just draw attention to slide 16 when you mentioned tree roots. You've got a different department there that might have a different view on a tree. It might be contrary to the highways view. So what's the relationship like with green spaces, and how does that work? Yeah, sounds like that's a tricky one for the policy makers to figure that one out. But if I may have a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, and it's in relation to slide 29. Great that we're getting roads and pavements resurfaced, and have done over many, many years, and no doubt will continue to in the years ahead. My question, though, is how is the quality of the work that's carried out by the contractors assessed by you and your team? Because sometimes there is some sort of question marks over the finish or the quality. So I'm just interested to know how the highways team quality control the road and pavement resurfacing.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of quality, we have a regular inspection when the work is ongoing. So they look at what the specification is provided to the contractor and what they're supposed to do. After having, because mainly you will see some of the time the crossovers, the wings, you will see the cracks, and sort of we get the concern raised by the resident as well as from the members. Sometimes it's not always the workmanship, and sometimes it could be various other things attached to it. So we monitor the work, they complete and verify the work. From this year, I'm trying to introduce the coring as well, just to core the area and look at what thicknesses of material they have laid. So this is something I'm planning to do moving forward. But mainly we do is just inspections and look at their material, have their material tickets, whether they have delivered the right material. So we have we have KPIs as well to monitor their work. So the performance is measured against those KPIs.
Thank you.
Councillor Maidens?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. I also have a list, but I'll choose to through supplementary if I may, Chair. I share your frustration. So we spent a long time lobbying to get Station Road in West Drayton resurfaced, only 3 days later to have a utility company leave their mark. And I know they have to do works. And I just wondered what your team does to ensure that the works are done in the shortest period of time, particularly on high streets and main junctions, and how those works, if possible, are coordinated. So, for example, if you're trying to go from West Drayton to Uxbridge, you can quite easily come across multiple utility digs, and it's just about how that work's going and what can be done to improve the coordination there in order to maybe predict or prevent those sort of things so that people aren't spending an age getting down at a continuous high street, and that's no disrespect to the relevant towns.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, that's really challenging for my team to coordinate the work. Most of the time, if it's the major work, excuse me, they have to give us 3 months' notice. So we coordinate with all the utility company. We have a coordination meeting with all the utility company every quarter. So they all know what is coming through in the pipeline because they could see that come in. Because when the problem happens is when there is emergency work or there are minor works. Because for the major work they have to give us 3 months, but for the minor work they don't have to. So sometimes that clashes. Although our team, operation team, they are sort of managing it very efficiently, sometimes it's not always happened. So especially I don't know whether you have experienced same in the north of the borough where you had HS2 work going on and Bexbury Road closure and everything, and we had a very chaotic time. So sometimes these things happen, but the team really coordinates with all the utility company, going through the coordination meeting as well as having a pre-plan meeting. We call it pre-applications. So they come through and then we allow it based on the pre-applications. So it happens, but sometimes it's sort of unavoidable as well. So that's a bit of a frustrating for us as well.
And certainly, I'll just back that up. In my cabinet role, I was always kept informed of what was coming on the programme from the utility companies. But because they're a statutory company, if there's emergency works or they deem it to be emergency works and classify it as emergency work, they just turn up. And you could have agreed work to happen here 3 months ago, and all of a sudden they think, well, this is emergency up this end. So they dig here and they dig here. And that does happen. And certainly I think British Telecom have been causing a few issues over the past few months, as well as Affinity Water. Because not only have they agreed works, they've also suddenly had emergency works. So, but I take your frustrations, Councillor Mays, definitely. You've got a secondary question.
Yes, Chair, for me, yeah. I feel there's many frustrations in that area, but it's around the lighting columns. It's great to have the new LEDs. I am finding regularly that the glass is smashed through vandalism. I'm sure your team's aware of that. But I wondered if and how often you can liaise with the team around community safety or those installing CCTV cameras and find out before replacing columns if there are certain areas where it's likely there may be CCTV, because some of the challenges we're having is the columns aren't quite tall enough. And I know that you didn't want to do that for every lamppost because it would cost a fortune, but in those areas where they're potentially looking to improve safety through adding CCTV, if there isn't already some coordination and discussion before there's a replacement programme.
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, that's something obviously is not happening currently. I take that on board. So we have our own programme. We share it with other people, but we wouldn't know what others are doing. So I don't know whether they have such program moving forward or they have a reactive, because most of the time they have a, rather than planned work, they have a reactive, so they move from one area to other areas rather than having one fixed location and then work program in terms of CCTV and where they do the as-bit operation or anything like that. So maybe that's why they don't share that data, because they are moving their cameras across the board. So definitely we will put that something on board and coordinate with the community team. If they have something coming in board, then if we have column replacement within the area, then definitely by all means we can coordinate. But all our new columns, they are not short columns, so they are tall columns, 6 meter. They are the minimum requirement, so they are good for any cameras. But all columns where we have a 5 meter and 4.5 meter, they are not good for the camera situation where people can reach and then they can vandalize the cameras. So definitely something we can look into.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Sweeting?
Just for your information, when we had the major review on fly tipping, it was it wasn't a recommendation, but it was an information item about the height of the columns, so that the issue that Stuart mentioned would hopefully be addressed. So that was something that is put in the report, if you read it, about the height of lighting columns. The issue that I'd like more information on, if possible, is coming from slide 27 and the drainage improvements. We have various areas, I'm sure this happens to all of our wards, where we've got a lot of standing water, and we put reports in about standing water, and we get reports back that X and Y and Z is the reason for it. But it seems to be, in some areas, very deep standing water, standing there for some time. So can you explain where the information on drainage improvements, what improvements are you actually undertaking at the moment?
The current highway budget allows us to maintain the existing structure, highway structure, rather than having the new structure put in. So I understand your frustration because lately we have seen very heavy rain within the short span of time, and what happens is the water drains into the gully, and from that gully it leads to the main Thames water. And we have lots of areas where Thames water mains are not capable to take that water, because same as when you fill your bath and you want to take the water away, it takes a while to drain the water. It's same thing, sort of, if the main is blocked, no matter how big or how many gullies you put into highway network, it's going to end up into the main. So our main problem is Thames Water not managing their mains. So that has been really bad, especially in many areas in South. I have seen, because the water will stand there rather than the profile issue is the drainage, not draining it properly, and they are slow running. So this is, I don't know, because I was sort of speaking to our colleague in flood elevation area as well. We haven't seen any Thames Water improvement program in Hillingdon, so we are keen to understand why they are not investing in Hillingdon. So this is something, obviously, we have concern as well, because the drainage, our drain is working, but because of third-party asset, we can't make it work properly.
Just a comment. I wondered if we could ask our colleagues in external services to select committee to have a look at talking to Thames Water about their improvement programmes and see if that committee would like to take up that mantle.
I'm sure Steve can put that across to them. One classic example is near Stockley Park. You go down there when there's a heavy rainfall, it's like a lake. Near the roundabout opposite the entrance to Stockley Park itself. Any other questions? No? I'd like to say, Poonam, on behalf of the committee, thank you for the very, very detailed overview that you gave us. And also thank your team that were involved in the highways department and area. They do a great job, sometimes under great pressure from utility companies and outside influences, especially the gritting team, down to the permits, down to the road resurfacing and getting all those programmes together. So if you can take our thanks back to them for the hard work that they put in for the residents of this borough and for this council. And thank you again for attending this evening. Thank you for your report.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, welcome, Ian. I'm afraid Poonam went past you because of your lateness, but thank you. So we will go back to agenda item 6, which is the annual complaint and service monitoring report, 1st of April 2020 to 31st of March 2021. Before you actually address us, Ian, I just want to say there's 37 pages here. It's an extremely detailed report. I've read all of it, as have my colleagues on this side, and I'm sure Councillor Sweet and Councillor Maiders have. So I'm just saying you don't need to go through every single one of the 37 pages. So if you'd like to just give us the overview, and then I'm sure councillors will have relevant questions. But any questions you do have, councillors, please do not make them ward specific. They have to be to this monitoring report only. Thank you. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you so much, Chairman. My apologies as well for being late. There was some other thing I had to be involved in. I think Councillor Sweeting's heard this already, so I apologise for that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Really, all I'm going to do today is just provide you with a high-level analysis of the picture that's emerged across the council. The reason why there's such detail in the report is because it provides you with information for the whole of the services that you have. I think from previous policy overview committees from years past, you've asked for more detail in terms of a longer period of time. You've also asked for more detail about the Ombudsman investigation. So it includes that, but of course that adds to the volume of information that's there already. Just to sort of skim through the various bits of information at the high level basis, I'll stick pretty much to Appendix B, which it just simply sets out that there is a higher number of informal complaints than there have been in previous years. So the year before last, there was 2,339 informal complaints, and this year there's 2,587. So it's an increase in that time. In terms of the formal stage 1 complaints, that's gone. It's the total for this year is 789, which is 70% of the 2,000. Sorry, it's 30% of the 2,587. So what's happening there is that the volume of complaints from the informal stage to the formal stage starts to reduce as you go through the process, and that's what the process is designed to do. At stage 2, you get 42 formal complaints, which is 5% of 789, and then when you come to the local government ombudsman investigations, it's gone down from 59 for the year before to 34. The main reason for that is that the ombudsman during the middle of the year decided not to investigate complaints for about 4 to 4.5, 5 months of that period. They felt they wanted the council to concentrate on our core duties of providing a service to residents, which is understandable. Personally, I would prefer them to carry on with the investigation because we were ready to keep going, but that's the decision they made. In terms of compliments, massively up from 301 to 502. Of those, and actually there have been many compliments from councillors as well, it's little wildflowers that have been the significant increase. I think there was 79 in total, so 12% of all compliments that we received were about wildflowers and people saying thanks so much, which is kind of like unusual for someone to take the time to sort of say, well, actually, that's really nice. But I guess it's in the current climate that we're going through, it makes people's lives brighter. Now, members' inquiries, we've had discussions on this already. The volume of members' inquiries in total has gone down from 11,000 for last year to 9,960. Now, I think Councillor Sweeting raised it with me before, is that we've discovered there are some issues about the way the total ward members' inquiries are recorded, and at the moment I'm trying to sort of work out what's actually happened. I think that the main thrust of the main reason why there are sort of discrepancies is that when you submit a member's inquiry, the system that we use relies on an address. So if you don't provide an address, the system automatically picks it up as Civic Centre. So it just gives it the Civic Centre as the location. And because the Civic Centre happens to be within Uxbridge South, you end up with a massive volume of that. We've had discussions, funny enough, since we spoke about how to get around that. It's not as straightforward as it seems, because the system is looking for an address, and it just looks for that. And if you don't put an address, it then says it's Uxbridge Centre, which is not quite right. But there are some other issues as well that we need to sort of look at to identify, so that how can that show where it comes to an elected member, you've got the true picture of the volume of members' inquiries that you have, which then matches the ward situation. I mean, I just thought I'd show you. I've got about 20 pages, and they're tiny little writing where we've got to go through and try and figure out how to do that. But the bulk of it is actually to do with this location issue. Just to give you some information about next year, the way that we're set up this year, this past year that's gone, is it's based on resident services, which is the bigger sort of service. But since then, it's all been split up into different directorates. So when this report comes to you next year, I know there's going to be some changes because there's ward boundary changes as well. So that will need to be taken into account. But you'll find that the report that you will have will be geared more towards this committee. So you'll end up with information that relates specifically to yours, but I will also share with you what's happening across the council, because you ought to know really what the picture emerges. I just wanted to for the sake of this committee, just for 2 minutes, I just wanted to ask you to look at pages 52 and 53. In there are the Ombudsman investigations for parking services, antisocial behaviour. You've also got waste services. It just gives you an indication of the type of investigations that the Ombudsman investigated in the service areas that you cover over the last year. To be frank, there's no smoking gun in there in terms of what's happening. There's a lot of did not investigate from the Ombudsman. But of all of those, when you look across, one complaint was upheld, which, if you look at the volume of services that the council provides, whether it's housing or antisocial behaviour or children's services, across the piece, the council as a whole is doing okay in terms of the Ombudsman decisions. But we do make mistakes, and we have to make sure that we put right what we've got wrong. I don't think I wanted to say anything else really, because...
Thank you, Ian. I think that the report was brilliant. The detail of the report was exactly what we wanted. The level and the depth of the information provided exactly what we wanted. So I can sincerely thank you for that, and I'm sure this committee appreciates the detail that is within this report. And I'm sure over the coming year that although your MEs were down 2021, I'm sure 21-22, seeing what's happening in 2022, are going to increase over the coming few months. I think you might start seeing big increases. But certainly, thank you for this detail. And as you say, the number of services we provide, with the number of residents we have in Hillingdon, you're quite right. Yes, we are getting things wrong because we're getting the complaints coming in. However, when you look at the Ombudsman investigations, as you said, he still thinks we are getting things reasonably correct, and we are actually dealing with anything that comes into here in a professional and correct manner. So, yeah, we do hold our hands up when we get things wrong, and we remedy that as quickly as we can. Councillors, any questions for Ian? Councillor Lewis, then I'll take Councillor Sweeting. Councillor
I'll be very brief because of the hour, but it's unusual to put down Mr. X repeatedly. I mean, it's unless it's just one complainant. that's brought 8. I'd encourage you to put Mr. X, Mr. Y, and Mr. Z, and differentiate them that way. But the thing that I thought was very strange was why you gave anonymity to the officers when they had compliments. I really don't see why they can't actually be mentioned and said if they get a compliment saying they've done a great job. I can't see why they shouldn't actually be named.
I take your point about mixed XY. Maybe I need to mix it up a bit more. I can assure you that there are different complaints on that. So I take that. Why can't... I'll take that back, actually, Councillor, but I think the view that we've had is that we don't put out information about our officers, but it is a lovely thing to have, to say, Fred got a compliment, and we've got lots of those. And actually, councillors have sent compliments in as well. So I will take that back. I have a feeling we won't be allowed to, but I will check just to make double sure.
I can assure you that any compliments that come in for staff, I certainly knew Jean when she was here, Jean Palmer. She ensured that member of staff got a letter from her saying you have been recognised, etc., etc. However, I think, Ian, you're right, I don't think we can because it's a public document, and to put their name in a public document, you'd probably have to get written permission from them to put their name in, etc. So it could be something as simple as that. Fred, Harry, Bert, or whatever. But, But I think you'll find that, Ian. I think you're on the right lines in what you said. Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Ian, for this very detailed report. Yes, we've been in email correspondence, haven't we, about the figures, the ME figures on page 21. And I think really the bottom line is that Democratic Services, the whips have agreed that that the monthly audit that councillors get are the accurate figures, and that in future things need to be sorted so that we do get accurate figures. But anyway, but as I say, it was a very poor day for me this particular Friday, and your email came with an explanation on the Uxbridge South figures, which certainly made me laugh. It was very interesting, because of the Civic Centre address being in Uxbridge South, so thank you for that. Can I go back to quite a few of the comments that we've got from officers, police as well, and the Ombudsman, which are the words insufficient evidence. We get it quite a lot in the Ombudsman reports. And I think I raised this when we were talking about the antisocial behaviour, the possibility of having the antisocial behaviour as a major review, is that often residents don't know what we mean by evidence and sufficient evidence, and whether we can, as a council, provide them, if you like, with information on our website on what, an audit of what we mean by sufficient evidence, because so many cases, antisocial behaviour cases, possibly police cases, ombudsman cases, drop because it's got the phrase insufficient evidence. So having a crib sheet, information on our website that actually identifies what would be the level of evidence. I know, for example, that keeping a diary of noise is sometimes very important, and I think we need to spell this out to our residents, because so many are very frustrated that a particular case has fallen when they think they have provided sufficient evidence, when obviously not to the standard required of us and of the police and certainly of the Ombudsman. So I don't know whether that can be taken back, because I do feel the issue of insufficient evidence is a hot potato.
Yeah, to be honest, Councillor, I agree with you. I don't actually like some of the language that's used by the Ombudsman. It's when they say did not investigate, I know they've looked at it. They've actually made their mind up in terms of what they've done, but they've used that terminology. The only thing I would say that the Ombudsman do that's really, really good is that you've used the word insufficient evidence, which is right, and I've used the word did not investigate. What they do provide is a detailed report. So what the committee, last committee I attended asked was, could you see some of the reports which says that? So it provides you some information about how they've arrived at that decision. The language they used, I guess, I may not agree with it, but that's their decision and ultimately how they choose. I am doing some work with the antisocial behaviour team to put some information on our website about things that they need to provide. So it might be something I can take forward and see if we can add that in. It tends to be things like, you're right, if someone wants to be prosecuted, then we need sufficient evidence that we can rely on in court. And it's that level of that information that you need to support your case. And I think sometimes having a piece of paper which says, I spoke to this person or they were making noise on the 10th of June, it won't cut. And it's having that, as you said earlier on, like a crib sheet which says 10th of June this happened, 12th of June this. So it's that type of detail that you need. So I will do some work on that for you. Okay.
Councillor Raiders?
Thank you, Chair. I wondered, out of interest, how many compliments roughly there were around the COVID pandemic and the way the council dealt with it, and just to add one more for this year and to pass on my thanks to the staff and their continued effort across the council and subcontract services, etc., in just the way in which they supported residents through the pandemic. Just be useful to know just how much appreciation they had.
No, that's kind. Thank you, Councillor. Now, here's the strange answer. I don't actually think we got any compliments in terms of COVID, the handling of it. So I think what tends to happen is people may compliment on specific things, like, for example, they may say, well, that there was a great, you managed to help this person in their property or something like that, or you managed to provide them with a light or something. People are good at doing that, but when it's the bigger picture, it tends to be less so. I see almost every compliment, and I don't remember seeing anything on COVID. But I don't remember seeing anything negative either on that. I think maybe what's happened is that it's gone to the central government, if anything, rather than local. I'm only guessing, I don't know.
Councillor Lewis?
It was just a point that it fell within my portfolio, the library staff, and I think the whole point is people didn't know what to expect of staff. So although they did a fantastic job in contact and looking after people, it was such unusual circumstances and there's such extreme issues at that time that people are overwhelmed and don't know what to think. And the last thing in a way is they need the help, but they don't really think about how fantastic the help has been. But it was, and continues to be. So.
Ian, just picking up on what you said, the previous committee have asked you for copies of the Ombudsman reports, which you're going to supply to them, I assume.
Yes. It was a similar question to the one that you asked, actually, Councillor, in that what they felt was that when I put in the report, did not investigate or something like that, and I put a few lines underneath it, I think one of the councillors felt, is that all the resident gets? If that's all the resident gets, well, actually, that's pretty shoddy. But so what they asked for is to actually be provided, not every report, but just a few related to their area, which shows that the level of work the Ombudsman's actually looked into. So I was very happy to provide them, as I'm happy to provide you.
I've looked at this and I've picked three just at random. One is complaint reference 8306-1 on page 52.
Yep. That's
an antisocial behaviour one. Complaint reference 8303-224. That's a green spaces one. The one under it, 8122840, that's a highways one. And they're all saying, did not investigate, and most of them are saying insufficient evidence. And the other one didn't warrant an investigation, insufficient evidence. If we could just see those three so that we can get a handle on, similar to what the other committee want, because if I was a resident and I was thinking, well, all I'm going to get is a letter that says, sorry, Ombudsman didn't investigate this because insufficient evidence of fault for the council. So, yeah, I think if we can see those, I think that would be good. Please. Yeah. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just comment on what Councillor Mathers was saying regarding compliments? The year, because obviously the COVID year was when I was the mayor, and continuously I would get compliments about the borough, about how amazing our green spaces were and the effort put in to make them look so pretty, about service. I had a whole list in my head before, about our services, about how, you know, when they're phoning the council with inquiries, things are getting done. I mean, it was just constant, Stuart, all the way through my year. There were letters were coming in, emails were coming in, cards were coming in. You know, it was constant. Everybody was so appreciative of what the council was doing.
For Councillor Sweeting.
I don't want to sort of highlight this, but we've got a complaint on the top, almost the top of page 53, which I'm not going to describe, but we do need to make certain that that never happens again. That's complaint reference 8511054.
Yeah.
You know, how has the council ensured that such an issue will not happen again?
Yeah. There's a limit to what
I don't think you could probably address this in this format, because you may go into detail that should be in part 2 as opposed to part 1. But I think certainly if you could provide Councillor Sweeting with, if you could do that, please. Because I agree with you, Councillor Sweeting. Yeah, how?
The Chair,
Councillor Lewis.
There presumably is a corrective action plan in so that it never happens again.
Yes, there is actually, Councillor. It was a one-off. I don't think it'll ever happen again, but it could happen again because it's you know, we're dealing with plots and burials, so it could. But we have put a plan in place.
Okay. Any further questions? No. Thank you, Ian, for attending this evening. Thank you for this detailed report. Like the highways report, this is just amazing detail for us to actually have, and to see the levels that come into this council as well, that you're dealing with on a daily basis, etc. Thank you to you and your team as well. And we look forward to getting copies of those reports, because I think, when you read that, it doesn't make very good reading for some of that. But I am sure that there is something more that goes with it. But obviously, you have to limit what goes into here. So we look forward to receiving them. And thank you once again for the very detailed, very comprehensive report you put together. And take my thanks back to you and your team, most definitely. Thank you. So the recommendation for that is that the committee note the contents of the report and provide any comments to officers as appropriate, which I think we did. So we agreed. Okay, moving swiftly on. We now come to the forward plan, which is agenda item 9. I'm sure you've all had the opportunity to read this. And if you know, it was pointed out by Councillor Lewis that even our select committee reports are on there to be confirmed. So, is there anything within the report, the forward plan, that anybody wants to comment on? Steve?
Thanks, Chairman. Just to note that since the publication of tonight's agenda, the next forward plan has been published. So I was just going to verbally inform you of the items that have been added for the October meeting of Cabinet, which will take place before our next select committee meeting. So 3 items have been added under Councillor Riley's portfolio, which is this committee's remit. There's the street lighting term contract extension. It's a 5-year contract from 2016 to 2021, and the report is going to seek a 2-year extension to that contract. There is an enforcement policy. Cabinet will consider an updated enforcement policy for key resident-focused services following an internal review, replacing a 2013 policy. And then there's the TfL local implementation plan, which was discussed at our last committee when we had David Knowles attending. But Cabinet will consider the Council's submissions to TfL for funding on local transport infrastructure projects. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Steve. Just running through what we've got in front of us very quick. We've got, obviously, Cabinet meeting 14th of October. We've got provision of pesticide analysis, radiation testing, bacterial testing. That is considered a contract, imported food office at Heathrow Airport. Reports and findings, obviously, from select committees, Cabinet. 11th of November, reports, findings, recommendations, consideration by the Cabinet and referred from appropriate committees. The 16th of December, Cabinet will consider the contract for provision of veterinary services at the imported food office at Heathrow, and any other reports. Moving to January, you've got reports from select committees. February the same. Same for March, April, May, moving past the election into June. Cabinet decisions. We've got petitions, obviously, about matters under the control of the Cabinet, various Cabinet members, local safety schemes, park and revenue account funded schemes, pedestrian crossings, compensation payments, transport local implementation programme, and then various external funding bids, etc. to be confirmed. And that's the forward plan items. Any comments? No? So we note, and there are no comments on that. Agreed? Okay, moving very swiftly on, our work programme. So our next meeting is scheduled for the 19th of October in Committee Room 6. So if you look now in October, we've pushed forward the antisocial behaviour and enforcement team review. We've had the complaints one this evening. So at our next meeting, we will have witness session. We've got the forward plan, and we will have the ASBIT service review coming through to us, the antisocial behaviour one. The only request I will make, Steve, if possible, please, is that any slide presentations we're expecting from anybody, can we please make sure we have them, not just 1 or 2 days before the meeting? I know that's not your fault, that's the officer's concern. So I think the same deadline has to be set on them as it does for the reports, because that will make it much easier for you as Democratic Services and the officer that serves our committee, because you know, we obviously got that one 2 days ago, the highways one, and it's extremely detailed, as we saw when we were going through it this evening. And the antisocial behaviour one, I'm sure is going to be, you know, we're going to get something out of that. But we do need these, and especially the reports and everything on time, so that the committee members do have adequate time to digest what's within it. Especially when you get a highways one so detailed as that. So with that said, the work programme November will be witness session as well. So if we move into November, then we've got the Cabinet forward plan, then ASBIT fines and prosecutions, including dog fouling, and then the past review delivery, littering and fly tipping reviews. So that'll be coming to us November. And then we can have Christmas off if you're all good. So if not, I might put a meeting in. No, not really. So that takes us up to November. The witness sessions, when I've discussed possible witnesses with Democratic Services, all committee members will be notified before the next meeting, well in advance of the next meeting, who we're expecting, whether they're from an energy company, whether they're from a company to provide the EV points, whether they're from car manufacturer, from anywhere, witness within the public domain or whatever. So you will be notified in due course. And with that said, the recommendation for this is that we consider the work programme and agree any amendments. Well, the amendment we agreed is to move the antisocial behaviour as bit into next month. So is that agreed? Agreed. Councillor Sweeting?
Just to reiterate what I said at the beginning, if we could possibly have a full written report on the antisocial behaviour and not just, if you like, the slides that we normally get, because there are issues, main issues, that have been identified by the internal audit report. And secondly, we've got, in the January meeting, we've got two information items, one on dog fouling and one on parking enforcement. Now, we've also got at that same meeting the budget report, which is going to be quite a weighty one, to say the very least. And I was wondering whether we could, seeing that our February meeting is rather light, whether we could at least slip one of those, or maybe both, into the February meeting.
I would discuss that with Democratic Services to see whether or not that's feasible to do that. Obviously, it's dependent on the fact that the February meeting is us looking at what our approved report to Cabinet's going to look like, and that could take a lot of time. So really we need to try and keep February light, for the simple reason being we may decide that the report that we're going to take to Cabinet, actually we don't agree with some of what's in it and we need to redo some of it. But I will discuss with Democratic Services offline, and Steve will inform you of any decisions that we make to move stuff like that. But we take that on board. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. With that, the meeting closed. Thank you.